In part 2 of the next episode of Painting and Travel, Sarah gets an entirely different view of Lake Lure from high atop Chimney Rock State Park, while Roger concludes his painting of the lake, concentrating on the finishing details.
In this episode, we'll get to see the second half of Roger's painting of the mountain lake. And when he takes a break, you and I'll go to Chimney Rock State Park and look around. There are some dramatic views, and it's the beginning of fall. Very pretty here.
I'm going to take a couple of minutes here and quickly recap what we began on part 1. This is just a beautiful scene. I love the way this tree is just hanging over the water here. Don't need too much drawing, and we have these beautiful mountains in the background. Now also I want to try and divide this painting into thirds. So we've got a line here, so this is approximately a third, not quite, but close enough. And then our hard subject matter over here, we'll put that. See, this will be divided into like thirds here. So our other subject matter will be right in here with this boathouse. So we'll put that boathouse right there. And I think I will start with my darks, which I usually do. So I'll take my sap green. I basically want to get in this composition and the values of the painting, the lights and the darks. And when I'm using acrylics on the background like this, I try and apply them quite thick because it gives me a little more time to blend these colors. Strange thing about reflections like this in the water, if we have a dark object in the water, it generally reflects slightly lighter than the object. If we have a light object in the water, the reflection will be a little bit darker. And that's pretty evident in some of these boathouses and things. Right over here I see a white door on a boathouse, and the reflection under that boathouse door is darker. Okay, well, I got my big basic shapes in except for the boathouse. So let's get a few tones here and we'll create that warm colored boathouse down there. And I'll take this brush right from over here and I'll drag this right across here like that. Wipe my brush off slightly, drag it again. That will give me these little ripples in the water that I see. Under the eaves here, this is dark. Now this sky is dry to the touch. If I were to scrape it hard, I could scrape some of that off, but it's generally dry enough to paint over with, where these colors of this tree are not going to mix in with the background. I need to give this tree some form, so I'll lighten some of these areas around the edge and so on. And I'll keep that edge kind of soft back there in the distance. Now these sky holes need to be slightly darker than the sky itself. If I have them exactly the same value as this sky, they will appear to be lighter. And a couple reasons for that. One is there's the contrast between the light and the dark. It will make that appear lighter. And also, between these sky holes and limbs, there are other branches and leaves and so on, which help to diffuse that brightness. Okay, let's take a short visit to nearby Chimney Rock, and then we'll pick up where we left off on this painting and bring it to completion.
Welcome. I'm so glad you could join us here at Chimney Rock at Chimney Rock State Park. This is Shannon Quinn, and she's the Public Relations Manager, and she knows a lot of great facts about the park. First of all, thanks for letting us come and look around here on such a lovely day.
Thanks, Sarah.
How did the park become a park? Who thought of it?
The man who was really responsible for the park as an attraction and for really sharing the park with the public was Dr. Lucius Morse. And Dr. Morse came down from Maryland. He was advised by his doctor to take the air, as they say. He had tuberculosis. So he was riding on horseback and came through and saw Chimney Rock and just fell in love with it and purchased the land for $5,000. He wanted to share the park with the public, and so he worked really hard to do that, and he's the man who we sort of credit with Chimney Rock.
And as far as the formation, it's so perfect. It must have been formed millions of years ago.
It was. Chimney Rock is actually over 500 million years old.
It's 300 feet, roughly, of the rock.
It's 315 feet, that's correct.
And then you can walk up the stairs, you can get up to Chimney Rock and see the dramatic views. And the one I like in particular, of course, is Lake Lure. That's what Roger's been painting. But now, at this height of about 2,200 feet, we can see almost the entire lake.
Yep, you can look out and you can see all of Lake Lure from the top of Chimney Rock. Once upon a time, a long time ago, there was a ladder that led to the top that people had to climb. And so, yes, we've added stairs and, of course, a railing around the edge of it, but it's pretty much, I think, the same as it was before. And the lake has an interesting history, too. When Dr. Morse came up to the top here, he looked down and there's no lake down there. It was just cornfields. And he envisioned a resort area. So they dammed up a part of the Rocky Broad River and created Lake Lure. And when Mrs. Morse, Dr. Morse's wife, looked down, she said, you know what? That lake is so alluring, let's name it Lake Lure. And that's how the name came about.
Perfect.
Yeah.
I noticed the Rocky Broad River as we were driving in, the huge boulders in it. It's so attractive, and I can see how there was plenty of water to form the lake. That was another great idea.
There was, yeah. People love to get out on those boulders, of course, in the summer and now in the fall, and get some sunshine, and it's a beautiful place.
Now, one of the trails I haven't been on is the Hickory Nut Gap that goes down to the waterfall.
That's right. It's the Hickory Nut Falls Trail. At the end of that trail is the 404-foot Hickory Nut Falls, and that fall was actually featured in The Last of the Mohicans, the movie.
You know, when you're on the lake, it's a much different feeling than when you're up here looking at it, and both are very serene and pleasant. I know Roger's view that he's painting is from the dock down there at Lake Lure, but up here, maybe he'll come back sometime and do a long-distance view of the lake because it's so alluring.
Yeah, exactly. We hope so. You guys are welcome back anytime.
Oh, that'd be great.
All right, let's jump over to this far shore. There are a number of cottages and houses over there, so I want to add some interest in here. I think I'll give that a spray of mist. And I'll mix a dark color and we'll just put a few touches of those houses over there, and maybe I'll just take my brush, wipe it off, and I'll take that same color that's right on the house there, and I'll just drag it down into the water, adding just a slight bit of reflection. And of course, some of the roofs and so on are different colors. So we'll just add a few touches here and there along the shoreline. And maybe a touch, too, of just a suggestion of trees right in here. Now this is where I might go back into the studio and refine this more, especially since it looks like it's really starting to cloud over. I could take a small brush, a very small brush, because there are some boats and things along here. Maybe add a few, these could be telephone poles or masts of sailboats and so on. Then I'll take that same shape there, that vertical shape, and just drag it down into the water some. And a couple highlights here and there. Maybe the sun is popping through a little and just catching some of the light on these roofs and so on. And right at the top of the mountain up here, a little bit lighter green, just sort of a rim light across the top of those nearby mountains. Okay, now we'll jump over to these boathouses. You know, I notice when I'm in the field sometimes, especially since I'm having to stand off to the side of the board so I don't get my back into the camera there, I do notice often that my horizontal lines tend to be crooked, and that's what's happened right here. You can see this is pointing down like this. That's basically because I'm standing way off to the side here. So I have to check myself on that, and I need to straighten the roof of this boathouse. So I can take my ruler here and just use this straight edge right down here as a guide, and just drag this roof so I know it's not crooked. I'll do the same thing right here to this little dock. Now this is 1-point perspective on this, so you know it would just be straight across. Now our boathouse in the back there. Let's put a few details on that. I'll take my dark color again. And right above the roof of this, I'm seeing some of the boathouse behind this one. And some of that will fade back here into the distance. Now I want to simplify this as much as I can. There is quite a bit of detail here in this boathouse, but I'm not sure I need all of it. I just need a suggestion of it to get the point across. And often I find that things like this that do have a lot of detail, if I simplify that detail, it does become a stronger painting than if I were to add just lots and lots of detail that doesn't necessarily have to be there. Okay, we got the boathouse close up here. Let's add some texture down here. A few strokes. This is just sort of the paneling on the side of the boathouse. All right, I'm going to pick up a small pointed brush, and we'll really get into putting in some of those little details now, like the pilings that hold up the boathouse. Right under here, kind of a warm color. Just drop those in one at a time. Now we have a reflection going on there too. Now remember that reflection is going to be slightly darker. So I'll mix a little bit darker paint, and I'll take this reflection here and I'll just drag it down into the water. And with a bit of a larger brush, I can just soften that reflection. And the pilings on this boathouse back here are dark. A few of those down here. And likewise, I'll just take this color and I'll just drag this reflection down. Okay, I have a railing up here on this far boathouse, and I'll use my ruler again to be sure that line is straight. And we'll put this little deck up here. Now there's some trees that are blocking some of that. So I'll sort of jump my brush around there, and then I think just freehand I can add some of these railings. This is really, or I do get a lot of detail in here. Now right up here towards the foreground, I'm always going to have more contrast than in the background. So right here in the foreground, even though it's an overcast day and I'm not seeing any real pure white, I'm going to take some white, maybe just a touch of yellow ochre, and add to that. And we'll make a few of these areas brighter just because they're in the foreground and I want them to stand out more. So right up here in the railing, maybe just a few rungs of that. And then right down here where this little walkway is, let's add some more light there. That'll just bring the attention here to the foreground. Brighten up a couple posts. Okay, right down here we have that burnt sienna looking color So I'll mix some burnt sienna with some cerulean blue right along this shoreline. I get that beautiful yellow ochre burnt sienna looking tone there. And this will add some more color to this painting as well. I'll pick up this some of this green gold right here in the foreground. A few more touches of greenery from these trees. And to give this tree some more variation, fall is coming on here. It's not here yet, but I can see a hint of some rusty colored leaves up here. So to add some color to that, let's take a warm tone and just add a hint of color up here. And since this is sort of a burnt sienna color, this will kind of echo that color up here. So now to finish this, I'm going to add a touch of sunlight as if the sun were to come out. And I'm going to put that right in the back here. Right here, just a nice little patch of sunlight just popping out through those clouds and just lighting that distant shoreline. Well, I know the rain is going to be moving in here shortly, but all the basics are here. I've got my values, I've got my colors, pretty much where I want them. I could add some details back in the studio, but this is really what painting out on location is all about. Getting to be able to study the colors, the values, as opposed to working from a photograph where these colors just aren't going to be as rich and as nice. A lot can be learned out here painting in the field. Now that I'm back in the studio, I've had a chance to look at this, and I think I can put in a few more details to add a little more interest to this painting. I can start by changing the green on the roof of this boathouse. It's a little bit too much like the green in the trees. And it was a green roof, but I think I'm just going to change the color of that some just to make it look a little different than that green on these trees. So I make it also a little bit lighter. And also there will be some light and shadow coming from this tree onto the roof of the building. So that will also give us a chance to change some of the values in here. I do want to keep this a green color, but I'm just warming it up with some burnt sienna. And I think this warm color looks a little better in there. Now let me take a smaller brush, and I'll take some of this same color, and we'll just put some of that burnt sienna look on here, but we'll leave some of this like it's in shadow there. Here, we'll put some light over here, and maybe the rest of this is getting shadowed by the tree up on top. It's pretty close to the same value, but just a little bit warmer. And sometimes I can change the look of the value, the lightness or darkness of the painting, not only by changing it, the light or darkness of the color itself, but by changing the warmth or the coolness of the color. So anything that has a warm color to it will appear a bit lighter. On my reference photograph, right under here, I notice there's a nice shadow. So I'm mixing up some darker color here, make that a warm color still, just picking up a number of colors here on my palette. And I'll make that shadow right across here. So what I'm trying to really do is just add a little extra interest to this painting that I couldn't really follow up on out in the field. I'll just put that shadow in there. Now that shadow is going to have a hard edge right up here, and as it goes down this way, that shadow is going to get a little bit softer as that shadow falls off. So I'll wipe my brush off, and there's a little water on that brush. So see right there, I can kind of give that a soft edge as it falls down this way towards the walkway. And a slightly higher value here, put just a hint of light coming across the top of this boathouse, just where the light is catching this. That will help to define the top of this building. Right down here where this sunlight is hitting the building, I can also add a touch more highlight right there. Now this building is a very dull burnt sienna color, but I think it might be nice to add some more intensity to that. So I'm going to take my cadmium red light, and I'll also take my little spray bottle here, and I'll give that a light spray and add more color right down in here. Don't want to add too much color in there. Just want to add a few little touches to help make it a little more interesting. Okay, so now that we have this warm color down here on the building, we also need to add some down here in the water as a reflection. So this is also a good time to spray the board. Now when I use a spray bottle, I usually press down very hard because that gives me a very fine spray, very fine droplets. If I just to spray it just a little bit, those droplets can get large. And I don't want large droplets of water on there. I want to get this fine mist. Otherwise the paint will just kind of puddle up there if you get large drops on there. Now after I put these on here, I need to take my brush, wash it off, wipe it off so it's dry, and then I'll just drag that brush right across here and pick up some of that wet paint, some of that red that I just put on there, because it's just not a solid patch of color that goes down there. There's ripples, so wherever those ripples are, I'm just picking up that color. Now this water was changing all the time when we were out there, but I did notice in my reference photograph that I took that some of these houses had a nice reflection right down through and into the water. So here again, we'll just add a few little details, and then I wipe my brush off and I'll drag that through here, because once again I don't want that solid patch of light coming down there. It's broken up by little waves and things like that. So these are just subtle points in the painting that can sometimes more easily be done in the studio rather than out on location. Another area I think I can work on is this tree right here. I'm going to mix some green, and I have a lot of different greens here out on my palette. I'm going to use my spray bottle and mist that slightly, and what that will do is any color I put on here will sort of soften that. This spray bottle and diffuse those colors and let that paint flow out. Now one thing I don't want to do is lose the large shape in this painting like I talked about earlier. I want to keep this large shape intact. I can have other colors and values in here, but not so many that I'll lose that large area, that large shape. I think I can also warm some of these greens down here. Take some burnt sienna, yellow ochre, just so everything isn't quite so green. Green is a very difficult color to work with, and a few variations in here I think will help. Pick up some of the blues and the browns, and I'm just giving this a light touch here, adding some colors. Now I think right on this edge here I can lighten those, maybe where some sunlight's coming through and hitting the edge of these trees. So right in there, that's, I think, probably a pretty good value there. That yellow ochre, it's basically just yellow ochre on here. Maybe a touch of white in it. Now that really maintains this large shape. I think if I were to put too much else in there, I might lose the effect of that large shape on that tree. Put a few more details right down in here, maybe a few more light patches coming over the boathouse. I'm using a fan brush to do this. All right, with a small pointed brush, let's add a few more details to these tree trunks. So I'll mix up a sort of a neutral warm color here, and we'll use that color and value to express a few highlights on the sunny side of this tree trunk. I know it was overcast, but I'm just going to add a few highlights in there just to express those trunks better. Let's drop down one more time to this boathouse here and the roof. This was a corrugated roof, and with some lighter burnt sienna colors, let's just put in a few small panels here where those ridges are. I don't need them everywhere. I'll just add a few of them here and there. And maybe right at the very top, I'll mix a lighter value and just highlight one or two of those, 2 or 3 of those. That really brings the focus right down into this area. Now I guess out in the field, this paint got on there somehow that goes into the sky, and it's very difficult to match sky colors. But in this case, there's such a variation here of the sky colors that it won't be so bad. If this were one solid color of a blue or gray, it'd be very hard to mix it and match it, especially with the acrylics. But since we have clouds in here, that won't be too much of an issue. And we can just add a bit more cloud out in this direction. That way we can fix that, whatever that was, that little smudge or mistake that was done out in the field. I think to finish this piece, I'm going to mix a light green with some yellow ochre. I'll spray my board, and I'll put a touch of rim lighting at the top of this mountain. I'm using a bright here, it's a flat brush, and I'm just sort of dabbing that in just lightly. I'm picking my brush up and setting it down because I want to get the look of those trees in there. With a touch of light blue, very light blue, and also add just a bit of rim lighting where this part of the mountain comes down there. And that could be fog, that could just be backlighting, could be anything, but adds a nice touch of detail. Well, I think that's all the details I need to finish this painting of this North Carolina mountain lake.
For more information about painting and travel with Roger and Sarah Bansemer, visit paintingandtravel.com.